Hey, 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 this is Jacob with another episode of Small Business Chat. Today we're talking about what the upcoming election, since it's coming up here in November, what the upcoming election means for your small business. And me and Matt are going to talk about a few things with certain policies that the two president elects are going to have for their run at presidential race. So Matt joins me again today to talk about that. He has a lot on his mind. Matt, what's going on?
Hey man, how you doing? We're gonna try to get through this without fighting and rolling around on the floor or whatever because we can talk because is it fair to say without identifying which one of us votes for which party, is it fair to say that we generally are probably going to be voting for different people? Is that fair to say?
From what you said this morning, I would say so, but
Good.
I'm never one of those people like you have to believe in what I have to believe in or I don't
Right.
like you type of. I'm always very calm. Yeah.
Perfect. And exactly. So the answer is, and hopefully if anyone gets, listens to this and gets, anything out of this is that so two people who may be, voting for different people for the election, can actually sit down and just talk about things, and hopefully laugh a little bit and just because that's what we need to get back to in this country is just being able to talk and all that sort of stuff. And both sides need to take that advice, in my opinion. So without further ado, so who are our major candidates for the president of the United States, Mr. Porter?
Mr. Donald Trump, Mr. DT, and we got Kamala Harris.
All right. So we got Vice President Harris and President Trump. Sorry, I'm haven't worked up on the Hill before. I still always call them by their last title. So because again, he was president, she is currently vice president. So we got VP Harris and we got President Trump. Who do you want to start with first? What like in reference? And so what this is, okay. So if we elect President Trump again, what is it likely to mean for your small business? Versus if we elect Vice President Harris to President of the United States, what is it likely to mean for your small business? Like, what are the practical effects of tax policies, all that sort of stuff? Flip a coin. What do you want? Who do you want to deal with first?
I flipped it up in the air and it's Kamala Harris. So let's since I know
All
she's
right.
got a huge campaign, I see it on TV all the time of what for if she was going to be elected, what it means for small businesses. So let's go with what I see on TV the most.
All right, Harris.
Yep, let's go for Harris.
Okay, Harris. So here's what I understand about what her small business policies will be. Both presidential contenders, I think, to be very fair and balanced on this, both presidential contenders, whenever small business come up, are very glowing towards small businesses. And they should be because small businesses are the backbone of this country. And I think they represent 63% of the employment in this country, as opposed to like large businesses. Why they don't have a larger lobby? It's because they're diversified and they're spread out. They really should. But both presidential candidates are generally always going to talk to that middle class, the people that start small businesses and such. Vice President Kamala Harris, excuse me, Kamala Harris, from what I have read, has proposed, several, things for small businesses. Number one, bringing up the small business, or rather new small business deduction from 50,000, excuse me, from 5,000 to 50,000, presumptively in the first year. I'm still trying to find exactly who qualifies for that. Is it just new businesses or whatnot? But we can break that out just a little bit more. She also wants to extend funding through the SBA to local banks to make it easier to get loans. And then I think really the third part, even though she throws in a child tax credit there to make sure that working families get money back for childcare expenses, but really for small businesses things, I think the third part of it would then simply be as, and then a sort of a subset of that second part, which is extending money and loans to start a small business specifically to areas of need and or minorities is what I've read. So which one do you want me to delve into first of those three?
The last one.
Well, the last one. Okay. Um, so, Vice President Harris has spent a significant time, as has, President Trump, courting the African American vote in this election cycle because it's going to be a very close election. And even though, it's, and even though the, African American population in this country, I think I want to say it's about 11.9%, used to be 14% of the
Mhm.
country. It's not growing as fast as the rest of the, parts of, country. Caucasians and Hispanics are still growing pretty fast. But they are expected to be more important over the next 5 to 6 election cycles than ever before. So they're really getting courted heavily, which is, great for their community. It would be wonderful for them to actually stand up and say like, okay, well, after you get elected, remember us, call the promises that you made.
Hmm.
Um, President Harris, a President Harris, if she were to be elected, has promised to basically make sure that the SBA and local lenders get more funds available to specifically, businesses that are founded in certain economic areas. And we talked about this before, like here in the Raleigh-Durham area. There are not many economic areas in this area, but like basically traditional areas that just need where it's economically depressed, and perhaps, and you don't want to say it this way because you don't want to sound racist or anything like that, but predominantly, minority, where my certain minority classes live, and or they're economically depressed. She wants to target those areas. And a couple years ago, do you know about LeBron James doing this, by the way?
I no, I don't
I'm gonna
remember LeBron
bring
doing
back, Mr. James and this King James. He is a fantastic businessman. Everyone knows he used the NBA money. It's his seed money for his real money. You know what I mean? Like, that whatever he's making, ungodly. You know how much he makes, like 50 or 60 million a year from the NBA, right?
it. Yeah. Hmm.
That's his seed money. He's gonna need things so he can go out and make real money. You know what I'm talking about? Like all of
It
his
gets them
businesses.
started and helps them transfer that
Yeah.
over to other businesses. I bet he got paid a lot of money for that Kevin Hart commercial I keep seeing on YouTube all the time. Have you seen the one where he's talking about running a 40-yard dash? Have you seen that one?
Oh yeah. He wants someone. Yeah, that's
You
awesome. That's
want
a great
somebody
line.
that can run a 40-yard dash, not somebody that is 40.
Not somebody who is 40. But yeah, that's a good. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not sure I don't know if LeBron's that good of an actor or not, because it looked like he was actually just cracking them up, and they just kept the camera rolling. It really looked like Kevin Hart was just riffing, and yeah, I would be fascinated to find that out. But one of the great things that LeBron has done with his money, props out to King LeBron, is he went back to Akron, Ohio, and I think he even had a reality show on it. We've mentioned this before, and so he went to an economically depressed area of Ohio where he's from, and obviously he has a strong affinity for, and he helped fund minority businesses in his area to say thank you. Hey man, you guys produced me. I'm one of your sons that made it, and I'm going to give back to my community. Props out to that man. So I mean, so no matter what anyone ever says about LeBron, I'll always be a big LeBron lover and a big LeBron supporter because he didn't have to do stuff like that, and that's awesome. Well, Vice President Harris has a similar plan. And by the way, just so everyone knows, the SBA has always had these, plans in place where they try to fund minority businesses or where there's certain loan packages and stuff. And if you're a minority in this country, which is, actually the majority of people I think are minorities in this country now, but if you're a minority in this country, or if you're a woman in this country and you're looking to found a small business, never sleep on the SBA. It's sba.gov. Go there. They have tremendous resources. They have funding for you, in the form of loans or otherwise. But Vice President Harris wants to sort of supercharge that and make sure that that funding is directed specifically at those, areas of need for minorities, et cetera, because traditionally minorities do lag behind Caucasians or others in the ability to start a small business, primarily because of lack of funding due to institutional reasons that we don't really want to go into today because of time limitations, but just because. So that's the first one that she wants to do. She wants to be basically like King James, except on a federal level, and make sure that her SBA is able to fund minority-owned businesses to a larger extent than ever done before.
And
All
also,
right.
she also has a proposal for down payment assistance for home buyers and also a housing fund. She also wants to provide $50,000 for a tax deduction for a small businesses startups. Currently, right
Yeah,
now it's
and
set at 5,000, so that's a pretty big jump.
that's a big jump. And so the question would be is, and forgive me, I looked, I just couldn't find it, as to what are the qualifications for that. But let's just assume for a second you found a small business in the first year, you can take a $50,000 deduction as opposed to a 5,000 deduction. We did the math right before we did live, and just so everyone knows how that works, it would just simply be as, okay, right now, let's assume for a second you start a small business and it's instantly successful and you make $100,000 in your first year. Congratulations. Let's assume that you have $10,000 in costs, to start the business, and or start and run it over that period of time. You've made a shocking amount of $90,000 first year profit. Well, typical tax rates, you'd pay, give or take a third of that, right? About $30,000, to the federal government and the state government, depending on where you live in taxes. So what this deduction would do is, so currently it's $5,000. So let's say you had $10,000 in cost, what we just went through, $5,000 in a deduction, and then that would leave you 85,000 on that 100. So you would pay only then, a slight amount less, maybe 27 to $28,000 in taxes, something like that. What Vice President Harris has proposed, and we have to remember that all of these policies that both President Trump and Vice President Harris, excuse me, have proposed are nothing more than proposals. Congress has to act on them, but this is what their administration, and they'll try to get through Congress. And if they don't have Congress on their side, candidly, none of this comes to fruition. But getting back to that $100,000 example we're talking about, so you got $10,000 in expenses, tack $50,000 onto that above that. So suddenly you have $60,000, which is deductible. Basically, you pay taxes on that 40,000, 100,000 minus 60,000. Now you only pay taxes on the 40,000, and then that would bring your taxable income down to 40,000, such that you probably pay about 12,000 in taxes, give or take 12, 13,000 in taxes. So if Vice President Harris is able to do this, you would basically be able to have, your first year taxable income would go down from 30,000 to like 12,000, assuming you made 100,000 on 10,000 in costs. That's wow. That would be fantastic. Then the next question becomes a little nuanced questions is, okay, well, what happens if you didn't make enough money to take that entire 25,000? Maybe you only made 30,000 the entire year. Can you carry forward that deduction into future years? Like, how specific is this 50,000 going to be? Because I do think it would be extraordinarily helpful. Number one, access to money, especially when you don't have it, is huge when you're starting a business. And then secondly, keeping more of that money so you can then flow it back into the business and grow that business is likewise huge. And so those are, I mean, I don't have a problem with any of her policies. I think they're all very good policies. So that's sort of what I know about what Vice President Harris would do for small business should she be elected. Questions, thoughts, concerns? What do you think?
I definitely think that Kamala has more of a plan for small businesses than Donald Trump does. I don't even really know too many plans that Trump even really has for small businesses. So I don't necessarily know what even really Trump brings to the table. Do you even know what Trump brings to the table for small businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunately following, President Trump, for since he was a real estate developer in the 1980s, because again, I'm old. And and so I mean, the first thing you can sort of know, so with President Trump, you really sort of have to like more follow his tweets and just generally what he says at his pressers and his, his speeches and all that sort of stuff. But the other nice thing we know about with President Trump, and understand that we are limiting this discussion to nothing bombastic, nothing, critical about, trying not to be critical about either person. It's just, here's black and white, what you can expect from these people. The other nice thing about President Trump is he was president before, so you can sort of tell what he did. And I'm always going to give, President Trump a couple compliments, on this. I thought small businesses thrived under him, because President Trump, if you know his history, he has had long-standing battles, and I don't know if this is standard for every real estate mogul, billionaire, pseudo-billionaire, whatever you want to call him. But he had long-standing battles with regulatory officials, very well publicized, IRS, State Attorney General of New York. I'm not even talking about all the recent stuff. I'm talking about stuff back in the days with the way he sold his properties, whatever. And I don't know, once you get into at that level of finance, if this is normal or not. But because of this history, he is a huge fan of deregulation, of cutting red tape. And I got to be honest with you, I agree with that, because I think nothing stalls a business or a small business faster than having 17 different government officials knocking on your door saying, "Oh, you wanted to sell that muffin? Well, did you get this license and did you get that license? And oh, you forgot about this tax and all that sort of stuff." And like, dude, I'm just trying to sell my muffins. Someone told me my muffins tasted good. Can I go to the farmer's market and sell my muffins? They're like, oh, wait, you didn't tell us it was a farmer's market. Well, you have to go to this division and all that sort of stuff. I do think the government has to realize that in order to have a healthy economy, you have to first promote them. So it's one thing to say, stop doing it. And it's another thing to say, let us help you to show you how to do it properly. And then to make sure that you pay whatever you have to pay, et cetera, et cetera. And I think President Trump recognizes that because he effectively has had to deal with this himself at a larger scale for years. So just sort of scrolling through some of the stuff that he wants to do. I mean, you generally can simply say is he will go through and he will eviscerate red tape. And if an agency is getting too much down on small business, and I don't, this is not per se his policy, but I think he will like, he'll cut back on FCC regulations. He'll cut back on all these things that just, just really put a wet blanket on the growth of small businesses. And you've also mentioned there's a couple things. He would exempt specific things that he's mentioned a lot on the campaign trail. He would exempt tips from income taxes. Well, if you are running your business is a restaurant, that's great news because your waiters are going to get paid more and you're going to be a happier person. He would exempt overtime pay from income taxes. That way you can have your workers, you can have fewer workers, have them work harder, and then he's going to basically say, you don't have to pay taxes on that overtime. Holy crap. That's fantastic. But the other thing I would say is just so what we know is he had Linda McMahon. Do you know who Linda McMahon is?
Um, is that the daughter of Vince McMahon?
Former wife.
Former wife. Okay,
That would
got
be
it. Oh,
Stephanie
close.
McMahon.
Close.
Stephanie McMahon. Stephanie McMahon. Wow. Yeah. Took me there for a second. There's some pictures of Stephanie grew up like in front of the cameras, and boy, did she grow up nicely. But I digress.
I agree with you. Go ahead. Yeah, if you get a chance,
she grew up well, and all that sort of stuff.
Watch the McMahon documentary on Netflix. I recommend it.
Yeah, and again, and I guess we once again have to put that the asterisk on this. I'm not condoning anything that Vince McMahon may or may not have done and has been accused of because he's been accused of some pretty bad stuff here and such. As a business owner, I know he built one hell of a business from a small business to whatever. Obviously, the means he used were, he's going to pay the price for that perhaps at some juncture. But his wife was by his side for many years and helped him build that business. And Trump appointed her to as the head of the SBA, if I'm not mistaken. I thought the SBA freaking rocked under the Trump administration. And what specifically, what I liked about the SBA is this is, during COVID, and it's very, the way Trump handled COVID, there's a lot of, there can be a lot of, critiques and all that sort of stuff in that regard. But one of the things that I think is almost unassailable is what the SBA stepped in and did for small businesses. And it was a bipartisan effort upon Congress at that time. That means Democrats and Republicans actually work together, even in this environment. They don't like to publicize that a lot, but they actually work together for small business. And they basically made it so easy for the SBA to just hand out money so our economy didn't collapse. And this was under the Trump, presidency. And he doesn't get enough credit for that because honestly, he doesn't campaign on that, which I've never understood why. He campaigns on all the stuff that he wants to campaign on. I actually think if he campaigned exactly on his record with the SBA and small business stuff and all that sort of stuff, and that's what we heard, maybe that's just what, CNN and all that sort of shows us. But I would be like, holy crap, he did do a lot because here's the things that happened under the Trump administration on the SBA. Small businesses were crushed by COVID. They were going under. We were going to have a massive bankruptcies like you've never seen. Democrats and Republicans came together and they basically said, we can't have this. So they got the SBA together with lenders like, Bank of America and Citibank and all the big shops and all the small shops. And they handed out trillions, I think trillions, to basically from Paycheck Protection Program to, they made small business disaster loans, the simplest thing you will ever see in your life to apply for. I mean, it was just like, what's the name of your business? What's the EIN? How much money do you need? Okay. And like it would be pretty, I'll just tell you right now, I know this for a fact because our business got, payroll protection program stuff as well. And then they basically forgave it. So they basically just gave you money to basically keep your business going such that then you could pay your employees. Your employees had money to go buy groceries. They kept the economy going. And so it's harder to tell what President Trump would do, but we do know he doesn't like regulation. He's a fan of deregulation, and under his presidency, when crap hit the fan, and there are some people that will blame him for crap hitting the fan under COVID, and some people who say it wasn't his fault at all, and all that sort of stuff. But irrespective of blame, his SBA rocked, and they kept a lot of people in business. And I think you have to give him credit for that because he's going to bring back in his same SBA chair, Linda McMahon, to basically run the SBA. And I'm not quite sure if they're going to focus on minorities. I think they're going to focus on all businesses. And one of the other things I just want to say, and this goes back to Kamala Harris's plan to compare the two, providing money to the banks is, and this is a criticism, by the way, providing money to the banks doesn't necessarily help small business. And let me explain why. If you ever applied for a loan, whether or not the banks are thrilled because they have it now guaranteed by the SBA and the federal government, doesn't mean they're going to give you that loan any easier. I love Bank of America. Bank of America have had, some of our principal business accounts for years, but trying to get them anything like a small business loan out of them is pulling teeth, man. Have you ever tried to get a loan out of Bank of America?
No, never. Mm-mm.
Good luck.
Ours is out of
Like
SCCU.
we would run millions and millions through them in a year. Yeah, and this is true. I'll just tell it to you. And I would call up their bank, their local, branch would be like, "Hey, we need a line of credit." Okay, they send out, fill out paperwork. I fill out paperwork for 2 freaking months. I still couldn't get a goddamn line of credit from a bank that I literally was running millions and millions and millions of dollars through a year. Whereas you go to your local bank, by the way, little SBA/small business tip, go to your local bank, you put your depository account with them, they'll probably give you a line of credit, which most small businesses should have because they're thankful for your deposits, because your deposits, there's a formula that allows them to lend more money. How do they make money? Lending money and the interest they get on lending. Whereas Bank of America is so big, yeah, I think if you're not, multi-million dollar business, they just don't care about you. I'd have these guys coming out all the time being, "Oh, well, we'll get you a line of credit." Never got me a line of credit. This business has been in business for 21 years. I think 3 times I've tried with their teams to get a line of credit, and we've been solvent, we've made money and all that sort of stuff. Can't get it done. So twisting this back into a little bit of concerns about one of the parts of the Harris plan, which is, well, we're going to make sure that the banks and blah, blah, blah can, lend more. Well, that still doesn't say you need to relax the regulations for the bank or say, listen, and maybe this is what she's going to do for those minority and, the specific businesses, in economic areas. Like you need to basically have the SBA go in and say, okay, all these documents that you need to have to get a loan from you, listen, we're guaranteeing this money to these minority and, economically challenged areas. Hand them the damn money. Hand them the damn money. We got your back. And because don't let us hand you the money and then you not lend it out. And I think that's one of the potential pitfalls I see with parts of her plan, which is then they need to then, if they're going to come in and say, well, it's going to be easier to get a loan, then it better be easier to get a loan. And I can tell you right now, in my opinion, doing it through like a Bank of America or something, no freaking way. Because those people, 21 years. Well, I just told you the story. Couldn't even get a line of credit through them. And it's not that they ever said no. It was just, okay, hand us all your tax returns. Okay, here are your tax returns. Okay, you know how long it takes to assemble all that sort of crap? Okay, hand us all this. What's your business? Every time, it was just another form. Every 2 weeks, it was, okay, we need 17 more forms. Okay, do this. It got to the point it was a full-time freaking job, and they never actually gave me a loan. So if the Harris administration wants to make this real, then they have to make it as easy as it was under the Trump administration to get an emergency or a disaster loan. They need to cut the red tape. And they basically need to hand the dang money out, and that will help small businesses. Other than that, it's just a pipe dream, and such. Whereas we know that Trump has a successful record, and I can't believe I'm saying this because you can guess which person I'm leaning towards voting for, but I have to, say Trump has a successful record of cutting red tape and effectively, helping out small businesses because he doesn't like, all the stuff that you got to deal with as a small business. Just let us sell our muffins, man. Let us sell our muffins. Sorry. Have you ever sold a muffin?
We'll end off that muffin selling. No, I have ran a lemonade stand before, but I've never sold muffins.
How did your lemonade stand go?
I didn't. I just sold, when I was a little kid. My dad wanted to do it in the neighborhood, and we just sat by, watched cars roll by all day, and one or two might have stopped over to have some lemonade. But other than that, didn't make too much money from it.
Hey,
Did start
did
my own
regulators
LLC.
ever did
What's that?
regulators ever stop by and like check the cleanliness of your lemonade stand?
No, no, but I did have to start my own LLC when I was 5 years old, and struggling. I have a couple of
By the
questions.
way,
Go ahead, Ged.
I will say this. I got to say, Elaine Marshall here in North Carolina has been our Secretary of State for many, many years. And just giving a props out to the state of North Carolina. Our state is one of the greatest states to actually start and run a business in. I love it. And if anyone's looking to like start a business, I don't understand exactly why secretaries of state are elected, but the Secretary of State's office works so well under Miss Marshall, and I think that she's done a fantastic job. And I encourage anyone who's looking to start, business into a state to strongly consider this state, because it is a wonderful state to do business in. We love the state of North Carolina, and I can't imagine running businesses anywhere else. Because it's just fantastic. That being said, we were just in Nevada, and some of our partners out there, they purely do. They love Nevada as well, and we know Texas has no state income tax and all that sort of stuff. So other things to consider. But just wrapping up my end of this, and thank you for letting me blather on about this for a little while. Yeah, the point of this was not to really draw conclusions. At the end of the day, from my experience, you know, it's harder to know what, President Trump will do for small businesses specifically because he just, it's his platform isn't as defined. And you just sort of have to sort of follow what he says. That being said, he has a history, in my opinion, of being extraordinarily, supportive of small businesses through the things that we've talked about today. I think that Vice President Harris has also made it a priority. President Trump's would be more through cutting of regulations as opposed to sort of more of a laissez-faire, hey, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. But we're going to make it easier because we're not going to have those people knocking on your door saying, hey, did you consider this regulation, that regulation? We're just going to slash all of those, in conjunction with an SBA run by Linda McMahon, which, is going to make it easy to get access for funding for everyone. From what I've actually seen, at least it was during COVID. Vice President Harris is proposed this really great freaking tax deduction, which is huge for getting a small business done, and such. But I think subtly would keep regulations in place if I know Democrats in general, and then would push money down for your small business as well. But the question remains is, would you have access to it or not? Because ultimately you have to go through the lending process to get it. But then she has specifically said for minorities and special areas, she wants to target those. And President Trump has not said that, I don't think, and such. But again, so it's sort of like, deregulation and an SBA that's run by someone who's proven to get money to businesses when they need it, versus a much larger tax deduction and possibly more access to funds, but possibly not if it goes through the traditional lending system. And I think that's what small businesses should think about when they head to the polls and the ballot boxes here in the next couple of weeks.
And that brings me to my next question: do you think all of the campaigns and the current policies that Kamala is running for small businesses, do you think that has out of maybe you don't have to say exactly, maybe roundabout, but out of 100%, how much of her small business campaigns are swaying your vote? Do you think it's more 60%, 40%, 80%? What do you think?
Do I think like the average voter is being swayed by, like what she's proposing for her small business
No,
stuff?
no, for yourself.
For me, my personal vote is believe it or not, I like for our businesses, um, I'm not 100% sure, to be candid with you, like because we represent small businesses around the country. I right now I'm not 100% sure who would actually be better actually as a leader. I know personally for me who I'm voting for because of things that have happened in the past. You can pick up on this and all that sort of stuff that, I just don't believe we can have that back in the White House. There it is. But I'm not 100% sure who would be better for small business. I almost tend to lean towards President Trump. And the only reason is that, like under Democrats, for whatever reason, they tend to have more regulation. And regulation to me ends up meaning more impediments to getting your business started. And it's more of a challenge to get it started. No matter what the rhetoric is that they talk about, it's great. Now, that being said, a $50,000 tax deduction for a new business is a really great, thing to really think about. But I really would encourage Democrats to really start saying, okay, but how we need to make it easier for small businesses to actually run without, we all need regulation. There's a reason why we have a Department of Health and all that sort of stuff. It's so we don't go to restaurants and get food poisoning every night because, well, maybe no one bought the fish, but hey, we're a struggling restaurant. And so we're not going to throw the fish out on Tuesdays like we're supposed to. We're going to serve it through Thursdays. And next thing you know, people get sick. Democrats will argue that, well, you need regulation to make sure they throw that fish out on Tuesday. Whereas Republicans would be like laissez-faire. If someone gets sick in your restaurant, then they're not going to come back to your restaurant. Then and then you won't have a restaurant anymore, which is also a valid point. I just sometimes I continue to remain concerned that if, in my opinion, if you want to run a small business, there are reasonable regulations that you should have to follow, but you should not have people knocking on your door 3 years after you're in business going, hey, by the way, did you know about this regulation? And you'll be like, no. And they're like, oh, well, that's great. Well, you owe us like $11,000 now because, well, no, there was nowhere you could have found this on any website or whatever. It's who we are. Here's my business card company. That is a true goddamn story that happened to one of my businesses. And I'm like, who are you? And they're just like, we're from the agency of blankety blank and yakety yak. And I'm like, that's a thing. And we have a business that starts businesses and helps people get up to speed. And so if you're going to have a government that basically has all this sort of stuff, make it easy on people. Go to your SBA, your local SBA, and they will tell you literally everything that you have to do. But there should not be any regulators that ever knock on your door and say, hey, did you ever not hear about us? Well, a lot of people haven't. What is that? And such. And I tend to think big government is more on the Democrat side, whereas Trump would basically be, destroying of, those type of policies because he himself as a business owner had to deal with that crap for all of his life. And he doesn't like it. Now, whether it's right or wrong, whether he's done right or anything wrong, we'll let all of the things settle out in reference to President Trump. But I do know just from a philosophical standpoint, he believes that less regulation is good for business. And I tend to agree more with that side, as opposed to throwing a couple bucks at it, but then say we're going to regulate the heck out of you.
Yeah, 100%. And also, Matt, do you feel that if Kamala were to be president, do you think that these plans will actually be put into action, or do you think it's some sort of just sales pitch to get small businesses to vote for Kamala?
Yeah, both. I mean, they both do that because that's what politics is, right?
Mhm.
But it's so everyone should understand the office of the presidency has limited powers, and usually this has to go through Congress. I think we mentioned this earlier. So definitely anything to do with the U.S. tax code, that is up to Congress to pass. And so, Vice President Harris or President Trump can tell you they're going to do the world, but at the end of the day, it is actually up to, the Congress to pass anything that's tax related. So if you want to take that for a grain of salt vis-a-vis her plans, I'm going to give you a $50,000, tax deduction and such. That is something that it absolutely has to rely on the Congress passing. So if you have a Republican Congress and a Democrat, Senate, and let's assume for a second Vice President Harris carries the day, is the Republican Congress going to give her $50,000 tax credit? Based on recent history, the answer is no. They're not going to agree to anything and such. But the regulatory stuff from the SBA that we've talked about with both President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, that is something that the president can do because they can direct their SBA, they can direct the director of the SBA. Here's how I want you to do, and they can promulgate regulations at the direction of the president that they can actually do. So that component, so the regulatory aspect, cutting through the red tape, that is something that is absolutely within the province of the White House and something that a President Trump could do and that a President Harris could do. So the parts of the plan, I would almost tend to say that almost everything, hold on one second. No, that's not true. The regulation, I was going to say almost everything in President Trump's plan could actually be true, but no, that exempting tips and wages and tips and stuff like that from your taxes, that would also have to be passed by Congress and then signed into law by, future President Trump. So there are both parts of their plan that they preach that are not within their exclusive control, but then there are parts of their plan that is. The parts of their plan that we know that they could do would be with Donald J. Trump reducing regulation, and cutting through red tape, because he can take out agency heads, he can, chop administrative rules and all that sort of stuff. That's something the executive branch can do. And with Vice President Harris, she can direct the SBA, this is what I want you to do with the funds, and release certain funds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then anything to do with the U.S. tax code, hey, we're going to give you a tax break here, we're going to not tax tips or anything like that, that's got to go through Congress first. So once again, if you're a small business, it's a great question, by the way. If you're a small business saying, okay, which is better? Is, President Trump's plan or Vice President Harris' plan better for my small business in the upcoming year? Because remember, this doesn't start till January, so it'll be tax year 2025. Keep in mind, they would have to actually do this through, parts of it has to go through Congress. Do you think Congress is going to agree on something that's going to help the other side, complete a campaign promise? Right now, just so everyone knows, so it's got to go through the House of Representatives for a tax plan. And then once it gets to the House of Representatives, it has to go over to the Senate. And once they both approve it, it goes to the president for signature. Right now, the current polls are showing the Republicans will likely hold the House, not a shocker, but that the Senate is likely, it's trending to go even, they may pick up a few more seats in the actual Democrat side, which would mean that those two houses have to actually agree before anything went to one of the respective the president's desk. So if you really want to limit it down from that perspective, you have to think about, okay, so what are the parts of their plans that they have absolute control in? President Trump, deregulation, cut red tape, and we know that he was great with Linda McMahon getting money to small businesses. A future President Harris possibly would be, not cutting red tape from what I've heard from her or anything to that nature, but making sure you can get money through your local lending, through your local lenders that the SBA is going to guarantee. We don't know who her SBA president is because she hasn't announced anything like that yet. And then, of course, really focusing on, minority and small businesses. So I haven't mentioned this, but so for instance, well, what happens if you're just a Caucasian person that wants to start a new business? Who's your better person to vote for? I haven't heard anything from Kamala Harris that has specifically said that I'm going to focus on you. She's focusing on, minorities and such like that for her small business initiatives, with the exception of the tax thing, which may or may not come because of Congress. Whereas President Trump would basically say, everyone gets it, right? So there's some more of my add-in for you.
Awesome. Well, I think that we'll end it off here. Really good discussions. I hope whoever is listening right now, has taken some things that me and Matt said, and hopefully it'll bring a little bit of information to help with your vote. And at the end of the day, me and Matt both feel strongly that whoever you're voting for, at least vote for somebody, especially since this is the future of the next 4 years of our United States. So. Definitely go down there and vote. I think the poll's open on the 17th, right, Matt? Of literally tomorrow, right?
In North Carolina, they do, but yeah, early voting is already open in Georgia as of yesterday, and they were setting record numbers. So glean out of that what you will. And if I may just chime in one last time, and I'll shut up and let you conclude this out. Yeah, the purpose of this is we're not trying to influence anyone's vote one way or the other. We're hoping for, just from a small business perspective, here's what we're seeing, and if our customers ask us, this is what we're sort of sharing with them, and such. We, at the end of the day, I always say, we don't care who you vote for. I mean, on some level we do, but I'm not trying to say, well, you got to vote for this person or that person. But I will always say, get out and vote, because our men and women have laid down way too much for us to have that right, and to, just take it away through apathy. I mean, from the shores of Normandy, to, Washington, crossing was it the Potomac, of course, or not, whatever river it was up there. But anyways, all of the things in between and such, we have fought for the right just to go and cast a ballot. Don't waste it. Cast it for whomever you think is best and serves your best interest, and you want to be the next president of the United States. Yeah, you have to wait in line, but it's democracy, and it only works if you participate. Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Just don't put down Mickey Mouse or something crazy like that. Actually
He
vote.
would kick ass as
I
president. What are
think
you
he would.
talking
I
about?
think he would kick ass as president. But yeah, as always, this episode is sponsored by the Trademark Company. If you have a of a trademark or a copyright or a patent that you need filed, you know the place to go. So, thank you again for listening. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and the rest of their week. And again, once again, thank you for listening.